The war had lasted for 112 years. The Galactic Federation had thrown everything it had against the Sellenary Empire, but nothing worked. It was supposed to be a war of defense, a war to protect freedom, but it had turned into a slow, painful defeat. The Sellenary were monstrous in battle, a warrior race with advanced weapons, incredible regeneration, and a complete lack of fear. They never retreated, never surrendered. Their soldiers were genetically engineered for combat, their ships built for destruction, and their strategies focused only on one thing: total domination. Many races of the Federation had fought bravely, but it made no difference. The Graxavans, the Sailor, the Yuva, and even the mighty Drevni, each had sent fleets, armies, and resources. Each had lost millions, and none had made real progress. The war had become a nightmare with no end, a meeting of desperation. In the grand halls of the Federation High Command, the atmosphere was grim. Representatives from dozens of species sat around an enormous table, their holograms flickering as they joined from different parts of the galaxy. Admirals, generals, and diplomats. All of them looked exhausted, hopeless. At the head of the table, Supreme Commander Varzan of the Drevni stood with his arms crossed. His 4 eyes scanned the room. The situation is clear. If we do nothing, the Federation will fall within the next 10 years. There was silence. Everyone knew he was right. Admiral Keylora of the Sailors spoke next, her voice heavy. We need new allies, new weapons, new hope. A Yuva ambassador, his silver fur dull from stress, sighed. There is only one race we haven't called upon. The room went still. Everyone knew which race he meant. Varzan's deep voice broke the silence. Humans. Murmurs spread through the room. The Federation's last option. Humanity. Humanity was a young race in the galactic community. Unlike the other species, they had never been part of the war. The Federation had refused to involve them, thinking they were too primitive, too inexperienced. The truth was, most alien races didn't trust humans. They were unpredictable. They had strange, aggressive instincts. Their history was full of wars, conflicts, and rapid technological advancements. And yet, despite everything, humanity had never lost a war. It was an uncomfortable fact. No species in the Federation truly understood how a race so physically weak had managed to dominate its own world, travel to space, and develop advanced weapons in such a short time. Some feared that bringing them into the war would be a mistake. Others believed they were the Federation's last hope. After a long silence, Varzan spoke again. We have no choice. We must send a delegation to Earth and ask for their help. First contact with Earth. The Federation sent 3 of its best diplomats to Earth. They expected long negotiations, discussions about strategies, and debates over resources. Instead, the human leaders listened for exactly 15 minutes, then gave a simple response. Oh, you need us to win a war? Sure, we'll handle it. The diplomats were stunned. This wasn't how war councils worked. The humans didn't ask for territory, money, or even special treatment. They just agreed immediately, as if this was a simple business deal. One of the diplomats, a sealer named Veklan, couldn't believe it. Do you understand what you're saying? This war has lasted over a century. The Sellenary are unstoppable. A human general, a man named General Cole, leaned back in his chair and smirked. They're not unstoppable. They just haven't fought us yet. The diplomats exchanged worried glances. General Cole stood up and walked toward a massive screen. He pressed a button, and the screen displayed a detailed war plan. The Federation diplomats gasped. It was flawless. Every weakness of the Sellenary was listed. Every possible strategy was calculated. Every outcome had been predicted. Humanity had already been preparing for this war. Veklan hesitated. How long do you need to prepare your fleets? General Cole smiled. Oh, we're already prepared. Then how long will it take you to win? The general's smile widened. 5 hours. Silence. Veklan blinked. 5 hours. Cole nodded. Yep. 5 hours. That's all we need. The Federation representatives didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. The beginning of the end. Humanity's fleets moved faster than anything the Federation had ever seen. Their ships were smaller but deadlier, their weapons unlike anything in the galaxy, and their strategies. Their strategies were beyond comprehension. As the first human warships entered the battlefield, the countdown began. T-minus 5 hours until the war ended. The Federation could only watch and wait. Would the humans succeed, or had they just made the biggest mistake in galactic history? The Federation diplomats returned to their war council in a state of shock. They had expected long debates, negotiations, and careful planning. Instead, the humans had agreed instantly. Not only that, but they had promised victory in just 5 hours. It didn't make sense. For over a century, the greatest military minds of the galaxy had fought the Exalnari and failed. Every species had tried, every strategy had been tested. And now, these young, unpredictable humans claimed they could end it in a matter of hours. The other races of the Federation refused to believe it. Doubt and fear. In the Grand War Chamber of the Federation, the leaders of many worlds gathered once again. Supreme Commander Varzan stood at the center. The humans have agreed to fight, he announced. They claim they will win in 5 hours. Silence followed. Then laughter. 5 hours? Admiral Keylora of the Exalor scoffed. We have fought for 112 years. Does this species think war is a joke? Perhaps they do not understand the scale of the war, said High Strategist Belcor of the Graxavans. They are an inexperienced race. Ambassador Veklan, who had spoken directly to the humans, shook his head. No, they understand. And they are certain. Varzan's 4 eyes scanned the room. Then let them prove it. Humanity prepares. Earth's military forces moved faster than anyone expected. Within 3 days, entire fleets were mobilized. Advanced warships, heavily armed strike teams, and devastating orbital weapons were already in position. The Federation military officers were stunned. It took their own species months or years to prepare for large-scale battles. Yet the humans had activated their forces instantly, as if they had been waiting for this war. And in truth, they had. For decades, humanity had watched the war from the sidelines. They had studied the Exalnari, analyzed their weaknesses, and prepared strategies no other species had even considered. Now, it was time to put those strategies into action. The Federation's concerns. Despite their speed, the Federation still doubted them. At a secret meeting, Admiral Keylora addressed the Council. We have seen the numbers. The humans are sending only a fraction of the forces we expected. Belcor nodded. They are using fewer ships, fewer troops. How do they plan to win? Veklan spoke carefully. They would not reveal their full plan. But they told me this. We do not fight wars like you do. The Federation leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Varzan exhaled. We have no choice but to trust them. If they fail, we fall. The battle begins. Hour 0. The human fleet arrived at the warfront. The battlefield was enormous. Hundreds of warships, millions of troops, entire planetary systems caught in the conflict. For decades, the Federation had fought this war with massive armies, long battles, and slow progress. The humans? They did something completely different. First, they did not announce their arrival. They did not send warnings, did not challenge the Exalnari in open combat. Instead, their warships simply vanished from radar. The Exalnari, expecting a traditional fight, were confused. Their sensors detected nothing. No enemy ships, no approaching fleets. They had no idea that the battle had already begun. Hour 1. The silent attack. Without warning, entire sections of the Exalnari fleet shut down. Communications went silent. Navigation systems failed. Weapons malfunctioned. It wasn't magic. It was electronic warfare on a level never seen before. Human cyber warfare teams had spent years hacking into the excellenary systems. Now, with a single command, they shut down their entire war network. The excellenary fleet could no longer communicate. Their commanders couldn't give orders. Their ships couldn't form formations. They were blind and deaf in space. For the first time in history, the excellenary were in complete disarray. Hour 2. The first strike. While the excellenary scrambled to restore their systems, the human fleet struck. But they didn't attack like the Federation did. There was no long, exhausting battle, no slow tactical engagements. Instead, the humans used pinpoint precision strikes. Small, fast attack ships slipped past enemy defenses, taking out command centers in seconds. Orbital bombardments destroyed supply chains, cutting off reinforcements. Special forces teams eliminated key excellenary leaders, leaving their troops without orders. In just 2 hours, entire sectors of the excellenary fleet were in chaos. The Federation watched in awe. Hour 3. The excellenary panic. The excellenary, for the first time in their history, experienced fear. They had always fought with overwhelming force, believing their strength was unmatched. But now, they were losing without even seeing the enemy. Entire battalions surrendered without firing a shot. Others, desperate to regain control, attacked their own forces by accident. It was not a war anymore. It was a total collapse. Hour 4. The final blow. With the excellenary fleet in ruins, the humans made their final move. They hijacked the excellenary's own communication network. Using their systems, they sent a single message. Your war is over. Surrender or be destroyed. The remaining excellenary forces, completely overwhelmed, had no choice. The war that had lasted over a century was about to end. T-1 hour until victory. The Federation leaders watched the battle unfold in disbelief. What they had failed to do in over 100 years, the humans had done in mere hours. Varzan turned to Veklan, his voice quiet. They were right. Veklan nodded. They don't fight wars. They end them. With just 1 hour remaining, the fate of the galaxy was clear. Humanity had already won. The excellenary warlords sat in their command chambers, watching the battlefield with confidence. For more than a century, their fleets had crushed every enemy. Their empire had never known defeat. The Federation was weak, predictable, cowards. Now, they waited for this new species, the humans, to make their first move. Nothing happened. Their war fleets scanned the battlefield. Their long-range sensors searched for enemy ships, but the humans were nowhere to be seen. One excellenary commander, General Kolor, growled in frustration. Where are they? There was no sign of the human fleet, no grand invasion, no massive attack. The humans had simply disappeared. Then, without warning, everything went dark. The silent attack. Across the excellenary fleet, screens flickered, communications cut out, and control systems failed. The lights inside warships flickered and died. The engines of mighty battleships shut down. Commanders shouted orders, but their voices could not reach their troops. It was not a weapon of brute force. It was electronic warfare on a level never seen before. For years, the humans had been hacking into excellenary systems, studying their weaknesses, understanding their technology. Now they had flipped a single switch, and the entire war machine of the excellenary had collapsed. Inside the high command, General Kaler slammed his fist against the table. Get our systems back online. Now. But his technicians had no answers. There was nothing to fix. The enemy had already taken control. Chaos in the fleet. The excellenary ships drifted helplessly. Their pilots struggled to restart their controls. Then suddenly, their own ships turned against them. Missile launchers activated on their own, firing at friendly targets. Ship shields dropped, leaving them vulnerable. Weapons refused to fire. or worse, fired at their own allies. The Excelenary fleet was tearing itself apart, and the humans had not even fired a single shot. One of the fleet commanders, General Xaltor, screamed in frustration, "Where are they? Where are the humans?" His answer came in the form of fire and destruction. Hour 2. The human attack begins. With the Excelenary fleet in chaos, the humans finally revealed themselves. From the shadows of space, small, fast-moving human ships emerge. They were not massive warships like the Federation used. They were stealth bombers, tactical strike teams, and hyper-advanced drone fleets. And they hit with perfect precision. Orbital bombardments rained down on key Excelenary command centers, wiping them out instantly. Explosions erupted across enemy fleets as human missiles found their marks with pinpoint accuracy. Special forces infiltrated Excelenary flagships, taking out commanders before they even realized they were under attack. The Excelenary warlords panicked. For the first time in history, they were not in control of the battlefield. They had been outmaneuvered, outfought, outmatched. Hour 3. The enemy breaks. Inside the Excelenary High Command, General Kaler's hands trembled. He had fought in countless battles, but he had never seen anything like this. His fleet, the most powerful in the galaxy, was losing without even seeing the enemy. The Federation had fought for a century using slow brute force tactics. The humans, they'd fought like predators, silent, precise, deadly. One of his officers turned to him, fear in his voice. "Sir, our forces are breaking formation." Kaler's eyes widened. Impossible. Excelenary never retreat. But it was true. Entire squadrons were falling back, their commanders confused, their weapons useless. Even worse, some ships were firing on each other, convinced that their own fleet had been hacked. The Excelenary had never experienced defeat before. They didn't know how to handle it, and the humans knew it. Hour 4. The psychological collapse. The final blow was not a weapon. It was fear. The humans hijacked the Excelenary communication network and sent a single message across their entire fleet. "You have already lost. Surrender now or be destroyed." The message repeated on every screen, in every ship. No matter what the Excelenary tried, they could not erase it. It was a message of absolute confidence. It was a message that made the Excelenary question everything they believed. They had spent centuries thinking they were unstoppable. Now, in just a few hours, that illusion was gone. For the first time in their history, they were afraid. The end of the battle. By the time the Federation reinforcements arrived, the battle was already over. What they expected to be a long and bloody fight was instead a one-sided annihilation. Hundreds of Excelenary warships had been destroyed. Thousands had surrendered without a fight. Entire planets fell without resistance. The humans had not just defeated the Excelenary, they had broken them. The Federation watches in awe. In the war chamber of the Federation, Supreme Commander Varzan stared at the battle reports. His officers were silent. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. One of them finally whispered, "It's over. The war is over." Varzan looked at Veklan. "You spoke to the humans. Did they truly believe they could win in 5 hours?" Veklan nodded slowly. They didn't believe it. They knew it. T-1 hour until total victory. The Excelenary forces were in full retreat. Their empire, once feared across the stars, was now crumbling. And the humans, they were already preparing for the next phase. General Cole, watching the battle from his flagship, took a sip of coffee and smiled. "Told you it'd take 5 hours." The Excelenary warlords had ruled the galaxy with absolute confidence for centuries. They had crushed every enemy, destroyed entire civilizations, and forced countless species to surrender. But now, they were running. For the first time in history, their fleets were in full retreat. The humans had done something no species had ever managed before. They had broken the unbreakable. Hour 5. The final blow. The last remnants of the Excelenary fleet scattered across the battlefield, trying to escape. But there was no escape. Human warships, faster and more advanced, blocked every path. Their fighters hunted down fleeing Excelenary vessels with merciless efficiency. The Excelenary's final command ship, the Emperor's Wrath, sent out a desperate distress signal. "We surrender. We surrender. Do not fire." General Cole, standing aboard the human flagship U.S. Titan, listened to the message with a calm expression. He turned to his officers. "We accept their surrender. Order all ships to stand down." The war was officially over. Time: 4 hours, 52 minutes. The humans had won, 8 minutes ahead of schedule. The Federation's reaction. Back in the Federation's war chamber, silence filled the room. The greatest military minds in the galaxy could not comprehend what had just happened. Admiral Keylora of the Sailors swallowed hard. They actually did it. Strategist Belcor's voice was barely a whisper. In 5 hours. Varzan exhaled deeply, his 4 eyes locked onto the battle reports. The war is over. For 112 years, the Federation had fought this war. Millions had died. Entire planets had been lost. Yet the humans had ended it in a single afternoon. Veklan, the Federation diplomat who had first spoken to the humans, finally broke the silence. Now we know why they waited. Every species had assumed that the humans had refused to join the war because they were afraid, that they were too weak to fight. But the truth was the opposite. The humans had been waiting for the right moment, and when they finally acted, they did not fight a war. They ended it. The Excelenary's fate. On the bridge of the U.S. Titan, General Cole watched as Excelenary warlords were brought before him in chains. The once proud rulers of the galaxy now looked terrified. Their leader, Supreme Warlord Kalor, clenched his claws in frustration. How? How did you defeat us so easily?" Cole's expression remained unreadable. "Because you fought like conquerors." Kalor's eyes narrowed. "And what did you fight like?" Cole leaned forward. "Like humans." The Excelenary had relied on brute force, massive fleets, and intimidation. But the humans had used strategy, technology, and psychological warfare. In the end, it had been no contest. A new galactic power. With the Excelenary defeated, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted overnight. The Federation, once on the verge of collapse, was now stronger than ever. But the real question was, what would the humans do next? Many in the Federation feared that humanity would claim the galaxy for themselves, that they would take the Excelenary's place as the new overlords. But to everyone's surprise, the humans refused. Instead of demanding tribute or ruling over others, humanity gave the Federation full control over the Excelenary's former empire. "We don't want to rule," General Cole explained. "We just wanted the war to end." It was a decision that stunned the galaxy. Humans had all the power, and yet they simply walked away. The final message. As the war officially ended, the humans sent one final message to the galaxy. It was not a threat, not a warning. It was a promise. "We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. But if anyone threatens our allies again, we will return. And next time, it won't take 5 hours." The message echoed across every system. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were the species that had waited, the species that had watched. And when they finally acted, they won. The war was over. But for the first time, in over a century, the galaxy did not celebrate. Victory had come too fast, too sudden, too absolute. It felt unreal. The Federation's greatest strategists had planned for a war that would last decades, but the humans had ended it in less than 5 hours. Now, every species in the galaxy had only one question. What happens next? The silence of the battlefield. The ruins of the Excelenary fleets still floated in space. Burning wreckage from their once mighty warships drifted silently. Escape pods carrying surrendered soldiers beeped weakly, waiting for rescue. Planetary defenses lay in ruins, abandoned by commanders who had lost all hope. On the command deck of the U.S. Titan, General Cole stood with his arms crossed, staring at the aftermath. Beside him, Admiral Veklan of the Federation spoke softly. "We spent 100 years trying to win this war." Cole nodded, "And we finished it in one afternoon." Veklan hesitated. "You do realize what this means, don't you?" Cole turned to him. "That the galaxy is afraid of us now." The Federation admiral didn't answer, but his silence said enough. The Xel'Nari had once been the most feared species in the galaxy. Their war fleets had ruled the stars. But now, the humans had erased that fear in a matter of hours. And to the rest of the galaxy, that made them the new greatest threat. The Federation's dilemma. Back in the Federation High Council, heated debates erupted. Some species wanted to celebrate the victory. Others were terrified of the humans. A few leaders even suggested removing the humans before they became too powerful. Supreme Commander Varzan sat quietly, listening to the arguments. One ambassador, a reptilian sailor, slammed his fist on the table. "This is dangerous. The humans did not just win. They broke the Xel'Nari. In 5 hours, we must act before they turn on us next." A feline-like Drevarin diplomat hissed. "You are being foolish. The humans saved us." The sailor ambassador growled. "You think they did this out of kindness? No. They waited until the war weakened us. Then they took control in a single strike. Now we are at their mercy." Varzan finally spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "The humans have made their intentions clear. They do not wish to rule." The sailor ambassador scoffed. "And you believe them?" Varzan locked eyes with him. "Yes." The room fell silent. Because deep down, everyone knew the truth. If the humans wanted to rule the galaxy, no one could stop them. The humans' decision. On the surface of a former Xel'Nari war world, human soldiers patrolled the streets. The Xel'Nari, once feared as the strongest warriors in the galaxy, now walked with lowered heads and cautious steps. But to their surprise, the humans did not act like conquerors. Instead of enslaving them or executing their leaders, the humans helped rebuild. Food supplies were distributed to starving civilians. Medical teams treated wounded soldiers, Xel'Nari and Federation alike. Engineers repaired infrastructure, restoring power and water systems. One young Xel'Nari officer, barely a cadet, watched in confusion. He approached a human soldier and asked, "Why are you doing this? You won the war. We expected worse." The human, a combat engineer, looked at him and shrugged. "Because war's over. No reason to keep fighting." The young Xel'Nari hesitated. "But we were your enemies." The human nodded. "Not anymore." For the first time in history, the Xel'Nari learned something new. Mercy. The new balance of power. A week after the war, the first diplomatic meeting between humanity, the Federation, and the defeated Xel'Nari took place. General Cole sat across from Supreme Warlord Kalor. The once feared Xel'Nari warlord no longer looked proud or confident. He looked tired. Kalor stared at the human general. "What do you want from us?" Cole leaned back in his chair. "Nothing." Kalor's mandibles twitched. "That is impossible. Every victor demands something." Cole smiled. "Not us." Kalor's claws tightened. "Why? Why let us live? Why show mercy?" Cole's eyes darkened. "Because the war is over. And now, it's time to rebuild." The Xel'Nari leader did not understand. But deep inside, he felt something he had never known before. Respect. The galaxy holds its breath. Despite the humans' kindness, the galaxy remained on edge. Even though humanity had shown mercy, every species knew one thing for certain. The rules had changed. For centuries, the Xel'Nari had been the dominant force in the galaxy. But in just a few hours, humanity had proven they were far more powerful. The question was, would they remain peaceful? Or was this just the beginning of something much bigger? One thing was clear. The age of Selnary rule was over. Now it was humanity's time, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The war was over, but the galaxy was not at peace. Yes, the Selnary had surrendered. Yes, the Federation was rebuilding. Yes, humanity had withdrawn its fleets. But something far more dangerous had taken root in the hearts of every species. Fear. The Selnary had once been the greatest military force in the galaxy. Now, they were nothing. And the ones responsible, the humans, had done it in less than 5 hours. The question was no longer, what will the Selnary do next? It was, what will the humans do next? And no one knew the answer. The Federation's uneasy alliance. At the Federation's Grand Council, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Leaders from every species had gathered for an emergency meeting. Even though the war had ended, no one was celebrating. Admiral Keylora of the Xelord tapped his claws on the table. Humanity says they do not want power, that they have no interest in ruling. Ambassador Velrax of the Driveran folded his arms. Do you believe them? Keylora hesitated. No. Whispers spread through the room. Velrax's golden eyes narrowed. Then what do we do? Varzan, the supreme commander of the Federation, finally spoke. His voice was calm, but his 4 eyes were sharp. We watch them. Silence. Varzan continued. We cannot fight them. We cannot stop them. The Selnary tried, and they were erased. If we move against the humans, we will suffer the same fate. Asterisk asterisk. Keylora's claws twitched. Then what are you suggesting? Varzan's gaze was cold. We prepare. Quietly. The leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the truth. If the humans ever decided to conquer, the Federation would be powerless to stop them. So their only option was to stay ready for the day humanity changed its mind. The Selnary's desperation. Deep in the ruins of the Selnary homeworld, the last of their military leaders gathered in secret. Supreme Warlord Keylor, once the ruler of a mighty empire, now sat in a dark room with only 5 surviving warlords. His voice was heavy. We have lost everything. One of the younger warlords, Sektar, growled. Not everything. We can rebuild. We can strike back. Keylor slammed his fist on the table. Strike back. Against what? We were the strongest species in the galaxy, and the humans crushed us in mere hours. How do you fight an enemy like that? Sektar's mandibles twitched, but he had no answer. Another warlord spoke, his voice quiet. Then what do we do? Keylor looked at the ruins outside. Once, the Selnary had been unstoppable conquerors. Now they were survivors. His claws tightened. We wait. The warlord stared at him. Keylor continued. We watch the humans. We learn from them. We evolve. Asterisk asterisk. Sektar growled. And if they come for us again? Keylor's eyes darkened. Then we will not be so easy to defeat. The last of the Selnary Empire had learned a painful lesson. They were no longer the rulers of the galaxy, but they would not remain weak forever. The humans' quiet retreat. While the rest of the galaxy panicked, humanity returned home. Their warships, which had crushed the Selnary in record time, disappeared into the silent darkness of space. They did not demand tribute. They did not place governors over Selnary worlds. They did not ask for anything. It was as if they had never fought the war at all. On Earth, General Cole sat in a quiet meeting room, speaking to the President of the United Human Systems. The President leaned forward. So, how bad is it? Cole exhaled. The war is over, but the real battle is just beginning. The President raised an eyebrow. Explain. Cole crossed his arms. Right now, the entire galaxy is terrified of us. The Federation fears we might turn on them. The Excelinary are licking their wounds, thinking of revenge. Even the neutral species are watching us like we're some kind of monster. The President sighed. We saved them. And this is how they repay us. Cole's voice was calm. We changed the rules. We showed them how weak they really were. Now they have two choices: fear us or try to match us. The President was silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. What do we do now? Cole's answer was simple. We wait. For what? Cole's eyes were sharp. For the moment someone makes a mistake. The shadow of humanity. Despite their silence, humanity's shadow loomed over the entire galaxy. The Federation watched them with nervous eyes, preparing for a day when they might have to resist their saviors. The Excelinary planned their return to power, knowing that their old ways would no longer work. Other species, once neutral, now rushed to strengthen their defenses, afraid they might be next. And humanity. They did nothing. They returned to their planets, their colonies, their space stations. They did not conquer. They did not expand. They did not threaten. But their silence was louder than any war, because the entire galaxy knew one thing for certain. If war ever came again, humanity would not need 5 hours. They would end it in minutes. The war had ended, but the story of the galaxy was far from over. Though humanity had withdrawn, their presence still lingered in every corner of space. Their sudden, overwhelming victory over the Excelinary had rewritten the balance of power. Now, the entire galaxy waited. Would the humans stay in the shadows, watching silently? Or had they simply stepped back, waiting for a reason to strike again? No one knew, and that was the most terrifying part. The Federation's fear. Inside the Grand Council Hall of the Federation, leaders from every species sat in tense silence. A holographic projection of the Milky Way floated above them. Several worlds, once under Excelinary rule, were now free. Their people celebrated their liberation, but the Federation's leaders could not find joy. Admiral Keylora of the Excelor tapped the table impatiently. Humanity has done nothing since the war ended. No demands, no threats, no expansion. Ambassador Velrax of the Dreveran frowned. And that is what worries me the most. Supreme Commander Varzan, the most experienced leader in the room, finally spoke. We must decide our next course of action. The Excelinary are weak, but humanity is strong. Do we continue to trust them? Silence. Some members wanted an alliance with the humans, hoping to secure their favor. Others wanted to prepare for war, fearing humanity's strength. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy could no longer ignore humanity. The Excelinary's last hope. Deep in the ruins of the Excelinary capital, Supreme Warlord Keylor stood in front of a gathering of his remaining commanders. His once mighty empire had been shattered. His warriors, once feared, now walked the streets in silence. His fleet, once unmatched, had been reduced to debris floating in space. But he still had one thing left: the will to survive. He looked at his commanders. Our time as rulers is over. We can no longer rely on our past strength. We must evolve. One of his officers, Sektar, growled. Evolve how? Humanity crushed us in hours. We cannot defeat them. Keylor's mandibles twitched. No, we cannot. Not today. Not tomorrow. But one day, the galaxy will see their weakness. And when that day comes, we will be ready. The Excelinary would not rise through brute force anymore. Instead, they would watch. They would learn. They would adapt. And one day, they would find a way to challenge humanity once more. The silent giant. Meanwhile, on Earth, the leaders of humanity held their own secret meeting. The president of the United Human Systems sat across from General Cole, a serious expression on her face. The Federation fears us. The Excelinary plot against us, and the other species do not trust us. What do we do? She asked. Cole leaned back in his chair. Nothing. The president raised an eyebrow. Nothing. Cole nodded. We have already won. We don't need to fight. The rest of the galaxy will struggle and prepare, but they won't attack us. Not after what they saw. The president exhaled. And if they do? Cole's gaze was calm. Then they will remember why the war only lasted 5 hours. Humanity had no interest in ruling the galaxy. But if war ever came again, they would not hesitate. The future of the galaxy. Years passed. The galaxy did not fall into war again, but it did not find peace either. The Federation remained cautious, strengthening its defenses, fearing that one day humanity might turn its attention toward them. The Exalinary rebuilt in silence, no longer conquerors, but survivors determined to reclaim their place in the stars. Other species, once neutral, now rushed to develop new technologies, hoping to stand on equal ground with humanity. And humanity. They remained silent. They did not expand. They did not conquer. They did not threaten. They simply watched. And yet, the fear of them never faded. Because every species in the galaxy knew one undeniable truth. If war ever returned, humanity would not need 5 hours. They would end it in minutes. The legend of humanity. In time, stories spread across the stars. Tales of a species that had once been ignored. Until they won the greatest war in history in less than a day. A species that had no interest in power, yet held the strength to erase entire empires. A species that did not seek war, but could end it before it even began. Some called them monsters. Some called them gods. Some called them the silent rulers of the galaxy. But the truth was far simpler. They were just humans. And in the end, that was what terrified the galaxy the most.